You can go ahead and turn in your Bibles to Proverbs chapter 1. Proverbs chapter 1. We come today, big part of our service today is celebrating our graduates. And we want to tell all of our graduates, congratulations. There's been a lot of work that you've had to put in to get to this point. This has been a journey of, 18 years in your life to get you to this point of graduating high school. And what is happening now in your life is you are closing one chapter of your life and you are starting another. And I've been through this. I've been here 5 years now, so I've seen 5 different graduating classes come through here. I remember back to my graduating class, and I remember the group of people that we had. I think there was about 10 of us sitting down in front of the church being recognized and graduating. And I look back and I think about those kids, and I think about the kids I graduated with. And as I was sitting here wrestling with what to preach today, my thought went to, what do I want to tell you graduates as you start this next chapter in your life? What is it that you need to know as you go out and you go off to college or you go off to the workforce? What things can I give you today that can put you in a better spot as you move forward? What wisdom can I share with you? And the place that we go to wisdom in God's Word is the book of Proverbs. It's the book of wisdom. Solomon, with all the wisdom that he had been given by God, but also the things that he had learned through life. He writes the book of Proverbs and he gives us wisdom that we can take and we can apply to our lives. And so that's what I want us to look at today. You graduates are going into a time in your life where you are going to be leaving home, many of you. You're going to be going into the workforce, or you're going to be going off to college. And your parents have been taking care of you for the last 18 years of your life. They have been investing in you, and they have been protecting you from a lot of things, protecting you from things of the world. Well, now you are entering into a chapter of your life where that is now going to be your responsibility to protect yourself from a lot of things. You are going to be making decisions about your life that your parents will look to give you wisdom, but it's going to be your decision to make. You are going to be going off maybe to college or to work, and you're going to be moving out of your parents' house, and you will be making decisions that will impact the rest of your life. And so I want to give you some wisdom as you take into this part of your life, some wisdom that I look back in my life and wish I would have made some different decisions, some wisdom that I wish I would have had when I was graduating, or maybe I wouldn't have made some of the mistakes that I did make. And so we go to the book of Proverbs, and we're going to look for God's wisdom for you graduates today, but it's really wisdom for all of us. There's things that all of us can take away from this sermon today to apply to our lives. And so we start in Proverbs 1, starting in verse 1. It says, "The proverb of Solomon, the son of David, king of Israel, to know wisdom and instruction, to perceive the words of understanding, to receive the instruction of wisdom, justice, judgment, and equity, to give prudence to the simple, to the young man knowledge and discretion. A wise man will hear and increase learning, and a man of understanding will attain wise counsel. To understand a proverb and an enigma, the words of the wise and their riddles. The fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge, but fools despise wisdom and instruction." Solomon starts off here in the book of Proverbs, and he is telling us why he is writing this book. And he starts off in these first 7 verses, and he acknowledges 3 different groups of people. He acknowledges 3 different groups of people. The first group of people that he acknowledges in these 7 verses is the simple. He calls them simple. We go to verse 4, and we see these group of people. It says, to give prudence to the simple, to the young man knowledge and discretion. The word prudence here means caution. So what Solomon is saying is the reason why he is writing the book of Proverbs is to give caution to the simple. Now, who would the simple be? The simple would be people who do not know really right from wrong. Maybe they're young. Maybe they haven't experienced certain things in life, and they don't know what's right and what's wrong. They're simple. Many translations will use the word ignorant. Now, in our culture, the word ignorant has a very negative connotation, but the idea of ignorance is you just don't know. There are many things that when I started pastoring here 4 years ago that I was ignorant about, things that I have learned now. And hopefully 5 years from now, I will learn more things and won't be as ignorant about things that I am today. There's this idea of ignorance is you just don't know certain things. It's simple. It's just not knowing right or wrong. And we see here, he says he wants to give caution to the simple, to give knowledge and discretion to the young man. All of you graduates, you are entering into a phase of life that you have never walked in before. Going off to college, for many of you, you've never been off to college. You've never been out of the protection of your home before. You're going to move away from El Dorado. Your parents will not be there to take care of you, to watch over you. And the decisions that you make, your parents may never know a lot of those decisions. It's your first time entering into this time of life. Solomon wants to give caution to the simple. The other group of people that he brings up are the wise. So you have the simple and you have the wise. The wise are the ones who know what's right and does them. We see this in verse 5. It says, a wise man will hear and increase learning, and a man of understanding will attain wise counsel. So a wise man is one who continues to increase in learning, and one who seeks after understanding by surrounding themselves with wise counsel. So we see a wise person does not believe that they have it all figured out, that they know everything that they need to know. No, they can continue to increase in learning. They surround themselves with wise counsel. I can tell you graduates, I remember very vividly graduating high school, going off to college thinking I was ready, prepared, and I knew what I needed to do. That I had the answers for everything coming my way, and then life taught me very differently, or God taught me very differently. A wise man looks to increase in learning and looks to surround themselves with wise counsel. One of the things that we will get into in this is who you surround yourself with matters. Many of you are going to go off to college, you're going to go into the workforce, and many of your friends are going to leave, and you're going to go your separate ways. I remember going to college. I went to Arkansas Tech, and remembering the first couple years, I didn't have people that I graduated with there. I had one person that I graduated high school with that I went to college with. Everybody else that I was close to went to other places. So now I'm in a new place with only one friend, and I had to meet new people. And you can meet friends that are good influences, or you can meet friends that are bad influences. A wise man looks to surround himself with wise counsel. And then we have the third group of people in the book of Proverbs, which are the fools. We see this in Proverbs 1:7. It says, the fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge, but fools despise wisdom and instruction. The fool in this book of Proverbs is the one who may know what's right, but just doesn't care and looks to do what satisfies them, what pleases them. They despise wisdom and they despise instruction. They believe that they know what's best for themselves. They know what's true for them, and they are going to follow that. Solomon calls them the fools. And so we see three different groups of people are established here. We now go to Proverbs 1, starting in verse 20. It says, wisdom calls aloud outside. She raises her voice in the open squares. She cries out in the chief concourses. At the openings of the gates in the city, she speaks her words. How long, you simple ones, will you love simplicity? For scorners delight in their scorning, and fools hate knowledge. Turn at my rebuke. Surely I will pour out my spirit on you, and I will make my words known to you. What we see in these verses is we're starting to get into an illustration of there are three different groups of people. There are the wise, there are the simple, and there are the fools. But then we have this metaphor of wisdom being called a woman. It says wisdom calls aloud. She calls out to the simple. She calls out to the people. And so we have this metaphor here of wisdom calling out to the simple. In verse 22 specifically, she calls out to them and she says, simple ones, how long will you love your simplicity? What she's saying is you are simple. You don't know right from wrong, but for some reason you love that. You've probably heard the idea of ignorance is bliss, right? You've heard that in our culture. Well, what she says is, how long are you going to love your ignorance? How long are you going to love your simpleness? There are scorners that delight in scorning. There are fools that hate knowledge. She is painting the picture for the simple ones that there are three different groups of people. but she is calling out to them, telling the simple to come to wisdom, to come to her, to seek after her. Why would that be important? Why would it be important for us to seek after wisdom and not love our simplicity? Well, Proverbs 3, starting in verse 13 says, "Happy is the man who finds wisdom and the man who gains understanding. For her proceeds are better than the profits of silver, and her gain than fine gold. She is more precious than rubies, and all the things you may desire cannot compare with her. Length of days is in her right hand, in her left hand riches and honor. Her ways are ways of pleasantness, and all her paths are peace. She is a tree of life to those who take hold of her, and happy are all who retain her." We have these groups of people. We have wisdom, we have the simple, and we have the fools. And what wisdom is doing is calling out to the simple. And what Proverbs says here is that wisdom is more precious than rubies. She has length of days in her left hand, and she has riches and honor in her right hand. Her paths are the way of peace, and she is a tree of life. And she is calling out to you. She is calling out to me. As I stood, I'm going on 10 years from being graduated from high school. It's a little weird to think that that's been 10 years now. And it's been 10 years since I graduated, and I look back at myself 10 years ago, and I think how simple I was. How ignorant of so many things that I was. I graduated, and I thought I knew what I was doing with my life. My parents are here today. I had great parents who taught me well, but I still was ignorant about a lot of things. And there was still a sense in me, though, that I knew what I was doing. That I had my answers. I knew what I wanted to do with my life, and I was going to take life by the horns, and I was going to live my life. And I have just learned so much from those 10 years that I had no clue what was coming my way. I had absolutely no clue. I was so simple. I could not have told you that 10 years later, I would be living in El Dorado, Arkansas, as senior pastor with 2 kids. To Lauren, who at that point I had never even met and didn't know she existed. There were so many things I didn't know. And graduates, the temptation at this point in your life as you are graduating and you are entering into this next phase of life is to think that you have all the answers. That you have all the answers. You no longer need your parents. You no longer need wise counsel. You no longer need maybe even church and God. That you know what you're about to do. You know the direction you're going to take. Do not let pride take you in that direction. Why? Because in the same way that wisdom is calling out to you graduates, there's someone else that is calling out to you as well. We look at Proverbs chapter 2, starting in verse 13. It says, "From those who leave the path of uprightness to walk in the ways of darkness, who rejoice in doing evil and delight in the perversity of the wicked, whose ways are crooked and who are devious in their paths, to deliver you from the immoral woman, from the seductress who flatters with her words, who forsakes the companion of her youth and forgets the covenant of her God. For her house leads down to death and her paths to the dead. None who go to her return, nor do they regain the paths of life." We see in these verses this illustration that yes, wisdom is calling out to you, but so are the fools. I told you at the beginning there are 3 different groups of people: the wise, the simple, and the fools. And we saw the illustration of a metaphor of wisdom being a woman calling out to you. And she is more precious than rubies. She has length of days in her hand, riches and honors, but you also have the fools calling out. We saw this in verse 16, where it says, "To deliver you from the immoral woman, from the seductress who flatters with her words." The illustration, the picture here is you have the fools that are also calling out to the simple. And they are immoral. And they look to flatter. And they look to bring the simple with them in their foolishness. She's described as an immoral, seductive woman. And in Proverbs 5, 2 through 6, we see an illustration of her and we see her characteristics. It says that you may preserve discretion and your lips may keep knowledge. For the lips of an immoral woman drip honey, and her mouth is smoother than oil. But in the end, she is as bitter as wormwood, sharp as a two-edged sword. Her feet go down to death. Her steps lay hold of hell. Lest you ponder her path of life, her ways are unstable. You do not know them. What we see here is a picture, as it says, her lips drip with honey, and she is as smooth as oil. The picture that Solomon is painting is that she is enticing. With her lips dripping honey, it's the idea that her lips look sweet to the taste. And she is enticing. She is an immoral, seductive woman who is enticing the simple. If we just had a conversation about wisdom and foolishness, we would all say, yes, we would not need to go the way of foolishness. But the problem with that is foolishness in this world can be very enticing to the flesh. It can be very enticing. And that's the picture that Solomon paints with the idea of the immoral woman, her lips dripping with honey. It's enticing. It looks good. And the flesh will want it. And so as you graduates enter into this next phase of life, I want you to have this picture that Solomon paints in the book of Proverbs, that the foolishness of this world that you are about to enter into, it will look very enticing. It will look very enticing. There are things about it that will please the flesh, and the flesh will want. You need to recognize it now. Before the temptation comes, before the foolishness really starts to reach out to you. Because once you leave your parents' home, you no longer have the protection of your parents to be there, to tell you that that is foolishness and that is not the direction that you should take. It's going to be your decision now. We talk a lot about in church culture that students and graduates, eventually they have to make their faith their own. And they can no longer live off the faith of their parents. What happens is you grow up in the life of the church, and many of you graduates have grown up in the life of the church. And you've grown up in church because your parents, being godly people, wanted you in church and wanted you to know Christ. So they had you in church. But at some point, you have to make the decision, am I going to follow Christ? Do I love him? Do I want him? Or is this the faith of my parents that I followed because my parents bring me to church? You as graduates, you were about to enter into that stage of life where you have to make that decision. And as you're looking to make that decision, wisdom will call out to you, and that is through God. But foolishness will call out to you as well, and it will be enticing. So I want to take some time and I want to look at in what ways can foolishness entice us. How can I prepare you graduates? I think one of the ways is to look at how is the world, how is this foolishness going to look to entice you? The first way is through pride. Pride. Proverbs 3:5-7 says, trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge him, and he shall direct your paths. Do not be wise in your own eyes. Fear the Lord and depart from evil. One of the ways that people are enticed to foolishness is their own pride. I remember graduating high school, and I was not a super prideful person, but there was aspects of pride in my life. And I remember thinking that I was going to go off to college, that I was going to do well at college, I was going to make my own decisions, and I knew the path that I was going to take. I had an element of pride that I could take on the things that the world was going to throw my way. And now as I stand here 10 years later, I recognize how weak Blake Daly is and how badly I need the wisdom of the Lord to face the things that I face. When I have stepped into a situation trying to handle it my own way, I have fallen and I have failed. But when I have sought after the Lord's wisdom, I have had peace in those situations. But the temptation for you graduates is going to be to go off into the world and have a pride about yourself that you know what is best, that you do not need to fear the Lord, that you do not need to seek his wisdom. And when wisdom calls out to you, the pride in you is going to say, no, I don't need that. And then the foolishness is going to come in and say, no, you're right. You know what's right for you. You know your truth. You've heard that in our culture. You know your truth and you should live your truth. That's the way foolishness uses pride in our life to entice us. As wisdom calls aloud, the pride in us will say, no, you don't need that wisdom. You don't need to fear the Lord. You don't need the wisdom of God. But what the book of Proverbs says is, do not lean on your own understanding. Do not be wise in your own eyes. Humble yourself and seek the wisdom of the Lord. The second way that foolishness entices us is through companions. I look back and I think about a lot of the people that I graduated with. And I look and I see many of them are not in church today. They're not in church. They're not seeking the Lord in their life. They don't seem to have any desire for Christ. And one of the things that I wrestle with is, why is that? Why is it, and you've probably heard statistics before in the church. I remember when I was youth pastor looking up a statistic, and obviously it's 4 years later. But one of the statistics was, in your youth group, if we had 30 kids in our youth group, more than half of them, when they graduate, will not go to church again. More than half. Why? Why is that? Number one, it can be not making your faith your own. But also, I think the people we surround ourselves with plays a big part in this. When I think of the people that I graduated with, they went off to college and they lived the party life, because that's what happens at a lot of colleges. They found friends and people that they surrounded themselves with that love to party, that love to go out and have fun and enjoy college. College can be an awesome and fun time. I loved my 4 years of college, but it's also a very dangerous time. It's a time where you will have the most freedom that you have ever had in life. And if you surround yourself with friends that do foolishness and do not seek the Lord, you will find yourself in foolishness. And those friends will entice you to the same foolishness that they are partaking in. Who we surround ourselves with matters. Proverbs 13:20 says, "He who walks with wise men will be wise, but the companion of fools will be destroyed." One of the things that I really caution and try to tell people who are graduating and going off to college is, when you get to wherever you're going, if you're going off to college or if you're going to the workforce, you need to find a church home. You need to find wise Christian people that you can surround yourself with, that can help you and help you seek after the wisdom of God. If you surround yourself with fools, you will be destroyed. You must find wise Christian family to surround yourself with. And I remember graduating high school, going off to college, and I loved church. I, at 15, surrendered to the ministry, and I remember stepping onto college and having a hard time finding a church home. It was difficult. And a lot of times, and we're going to get into this in a second, there would be a lot of Sundays that I would wake up and it would just be a lot easier not to go, to just lay in bed and have a free day to do what I wanted. There's foolishness in that. There's not surrounding yourself with wise people, and then you fall into sin because you put yourself on an island by yourself, or you allowed people who are fools to be on your island with you, and you were enticed to foolishness. Who you surround yourself with matters. And that is true for you graduates, but that is also true for every single one of us. Who we surround ourselves with matters. We need Christian brothers and sisters who can help us seek the wisdom of God. And the third way that foolishness entices us is through laziness. Now, on the outskirts, you might not understand what I mean by that. Wisdom is not something that we just have. Wisdom is something we seek after. We seek after it. We see this in Proverbs 6, starting in verse 6. It says, "Go to the ant, you sluggard, consider her ways and be wise, which having no captain, overseer, or ruler, provides her supplies in the summer and gathers her food in the harvest. How long will you slumber, O sluggard? When will you rise from your sleep? A little sleep, a little slumber, a little folding of the hands to sleep. So shall your poverty come on you like a prowler, and your need like an armed man." Here's the picture that is being painted here. You have a sluggard, and the sluggard is told to go look at the ant and go look how hard the ant is working. The ant is preparing itself. The ant is gathering food for itself in the summer so that when winter comes, it can go underground, it can be safe, and it can have food to survive the winter. While the sluggard is just enjoying its time, is being lazy, is wanting to sleep, is wanting to spend its time doing whatever it is it wants to do, being lazy and not preparing itself for what's coming ahead. Wisdom is something we seek after, and all of you graduates are entering into a stage of life that you do not know what's coming. I still do not know in my future what is coming. There are things that happen in my life all the time that I could have never imagined that I'd be faced with that situation. You don't know what's coming. But the question is are you preparing yourself? Are you seeking after the wisdom of God, or are you being the sluggard? Enjoying life, enjoying the fruit of what you have today, but not understanding that winter is coming. The hard time is coming, and you're not preparing yourself for it. So when winter comes, you don't survive. You are destroyed. That situation that you couldn't foresee, that you couldn't know was coming, but because you weren't seeking the wisdom of God, you weren't preparing yourself, that situation destroys you. Because we weren't seeking the wisdom of God. Laziness destroys. Laziness entices us to foolishness. Proverbs 20:13 says, "Do not love sleep, lest you come to poverty. Open your eyes, and you will be satisfied with bread." Well, we know in the book of John, Jesus is called the bread of life. And there is a lot of different application for this. We can have a conversation about you going off to college or you going to the workforce. Don't love sleep. Don't love skipping classes. Don't love not taking care of the things that you're supposed to take care of, because then you will not get your degree, and then it's going to be harder to get a job in what you're wanting to do. We can have that conversation, and there's a lot of truth to that. I know many people in college who would rather sleep in, not go to class, and then they had to drop out of college, and now they're working a job which is not what they wanted to do with their life, because they love sleep and they loved laziness. But there's also a spiritual component to this. If you've grown up in the life of the church, you know we tell you all the time, you need to be studying the Word. You need to be spending time in prayer. You need to be seeking after the Lord in your day-to-day life, and this applies to that. Many Christians are walking around in life saying they love Christ, but not seeking Him day by day. And then when foolishness comes to entice them, they fall into foolishness because they weren't seeking the wisdom of God. The laziness that was in their life is what brought them to a place of foolishness. Whereas if they would have been seeking the Lord and seeking His wisdom, the Lord could have protected them from that thing that was coming. But our laziness can entice us to foolishness. So we looked at this idea of being enticed by foolishness, and I want all of us to know, but especially our graduates today, that foolishness is calling out to us. Foolishness is looking to entice us. But wisdom is calling out to us as well. And I want you to see today, what is the value of wisdom? What is the value of God's wisdom? Well, the first thing that God's wisdom brings in our life is safety. It brings safety. Proverbs 1:33 says, "But whoever listens to me will dwell safely and will be secure without fear of evil." There is safety in the wisdom of God. You see, as you seek after God's wisdom, He supplies wisdom to you. There's Bible verses that even address the idea that when you seek the wisdom of God, He will give it to you. He will give it to you. So when we seek after the wisdom of God, He gives us wisdom. And then when we step into a situation, a very difficult situation with landmines all around us, where if we step on those landmines, the situation blows up in our face, if we will seek His wisdom, He will keep us safe. And He will direct and guide our paths in a way that will protect us from the things that are coming. God's wisdom can keep us safe. Whereas if we don't have that wisdom, we step on the landmines, and that situation blows up in our face. For the other two things that we see the value of wisdom, we're going to go to Proverbs 2, starting in verse 1. It says, my son, if you receive my words and treasure my commands within you, so that you incline your ear to wisdom and apply your heart to understanding. Yes, you cry out for discernment and lift up your voice to understanding. If you seek her as silver and seek for her as for hidden treasures. I want to stop here and I want you to think about this. He says we are to seek for her as silver and seek for her as hidden treasure. You can't be lazy and do that. What we also see is this is a person who understands the value of that, who sees the wisdom of the Lord like a treasure and wants that treasure so much, they go looking for it. Verse 5, then you will understand the fear of the Lord and find the knowledge of God. For the Lord gives wisdom. From his mouth comes knowledge and understanding. He stores up sound wisdom for the upright. He is a shield to those who walk uprightly. He guards the path of justice and preserves the ways of his saints. Then you will understand righteousness and justice, equity, and every good path. Some of the things that I saw when I was going through those verses is the value of wisdom. The next thing that is the value of wisdom is we will understand the fear of the Lord. In church culture today, we don't talk about fear of the Lord enough. In our church culture today, we talk a lot about the love of God, and God is a loving God. We talk about the grace of Christ. Christ gives grace. But we don't address enough fear of the Lord. See, when we receive the wisdom of God, we come to a place where we understand fear of the Lord. And this is what fear of the Lord looks like. I like to illustrate it to my parents who are here today. In my family, I think I talked about this last week on Mother's Day, my mother was the big disciplinarian, okay? She was the one that disciplined. I think she got some enjoyment out of it personally, but she disciplined a lot. She had a paddle that she would whoop us with, right? And I love and respect my parents. But I also understood if I stepped out of line, there were consequences coming. And because of that, there was a healthy fear for my parents. A healthy fear that a lot of kids don't grow up with today. And now we kind of see our culture, we see the negative ramifications of that. That there's a lack of discipline in kids' life, and they just walk in foolishness because of it. But I had a healthy amount of respect and fear for my parents, knowing if I stepped out of line, consequences were coming. And that helped keep me from stepping out of line. Now take that principle and apply it to the Lord. If I love the Lord and I respect the Lord, but I also understand the power of the Lord, and I know that the book of Revelation tells me the Lord disciplines those he loves. He disciplines those he loves. Then that keeps me from walking in foolishness. In the same way, my parents disciplined me because they loved me, and they wanted me to know right from wrong. They didn't want me to stay simple. They wanted me to grow and become a man and learn wisdom. God operates the same way. God does not want us to stay simple because he knows if we stay simple, we will be enticed to foolishness. No, he wants us to grow in his word and his knowledge and his wisdom. So when we step out of line, he disciplines. But if we understand the fear of the Lord, that can keep us from walking in the ways of foolishness and keep us to walk in his ways, which will bring us safety and will help us understand the fear of the Lord. And the third thing that I have was brought up, well, I have Proverbs 2:5 where this is said, then you will understand the fear of the Lord and find the knowledge of God. But the other thing that we see in verse 7 is it says, the fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge, but fools despise wisdom and instruction. So again, we go back to Proverbs 1:7 where it says the fools despise wisdom and instruction. They don't understand the fear of the Lord because the fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge. They don't fear the Lord. And so we see how fearing the Lord and valuing that can keep us in safety. And then the other thing is the value of wisdom is we are given a shield by God. And this is in Proverbs 2:7 where it says he stores up sound wisdom for the upright. He is a shield to those who walk uprightly. In Ephesians 6, it talks about the armor of God. And one of the armor is a shield. And the shield, what it is to do is it protects us from the fiery darts that the enemy throws at us. And the fiery darts that the enemy throws is temptation. When we value God's wisdom and when we seek the wisdom of God, he gives us a shield to protect ourselves from the temptation that is going to come our way, to protect ourselves from the foolishness that's going to look to entice us. He gives us a shield to protect ourselves. But if we're not seeking after his wisdom, we don't have the shield that he is offering. We aren't taking up that shield. So when the fiery darts are thrown our way, the temptation is thrown our way, we have nothing to protect ourselves. And so in this, we see the value of wisdom. It's in Proverbs 2:10-12, where it also says, when wisdom enters your heart and knowledge is pleasant to your soul, discretion will preserve you. You will be preserved. When you understand the wisdom of God, you seek his knowledge. Discretion will preserve you, and understanding will keep you to deliver you from the way of evil, from the man who speaks perverse things. The wisdom of God will protect you from the foolishness of this world. But if you are not seeking after the wisdom of God, you have nothing to protect yourself. So within this conversation, graduates, the things that I really want you to walk away with today is, yes, you are entering into a new phase of life, and there are things coming that you do not know. And in the book of Proverbs, we have the wise, the simple, and the fools. And wisdom is calling out to us, but so are the fools, and they are looking to entice. And the ways that they entice are through pride, through other people, and through laziness. As we don't seek the wisdom of God, that will entice us to foolishness. But he protects. He is a shield to us if we will seek him. If we will seek him in his wisdom. So graduates, as you go off into this next portion of your life, seek the wisdom of God. Seek the wisdom of God. All of us here, all of us are being thrown foolishness all the time. And the foolishness of this world is looking to entice us. Seek the wisdom of God, and he can protect you. The last thing that I want to leave you with, graduates, is actually yesterday. I believe it was yesterday I sent this out. I sent a text to the whole congregation, and I sent this verse, 2 Corinthians 4, starting in verse 16. It says, therefore we do not lose heart, even though our outward man is perishing, yet the inward man is being renewed day by day. For our light affliction, which is but for a moment, is working for us a far more exceeding and eternal weight of glory, while we do not look at the things which are seen, but at the things which are not seen. For the things which are seen are temporary, but the things which are not seen are eternal. This is a word of encouragement for us all today. In verse 17, it says we have light affliction. You graduates are going into a chapter of life, and you will have hard times. You will struggle. You will have times where if you're going off to college, you will be up all night studying, and you will have a test the next day, and you may not do well on the test, and you will think, I wasted all that time. You will have moments where you will miss home. You will. You will have moments where you will feel alone. You will face difficult times. But what Paul tells us here in 2 Corinthians 4, it says, for our light affliction, which is but for a moment, is working for us a far more exceeding and eternal weight of glory. The picture here that I want to paint for you is you will face hard times as you start this next chapter in life. But the affliction that you face is nothing compared to the glory of God. And as you seek the Lord and you seek his wisdom, keep that in mind. Even in the midst of all the difficulty you will face, that difficulty, that hardship is nothing compared to the glory that the Lord has in store for us with him in eternity. And that thought is what can keep us walking in the way of the Lord, even in the midst of that difficulty. Please take that encouragement with you here today. All of us here, take that encouragement with you today. Whatever you're facing, whatever you're struggling with, it is nothing compared to the glory of the Lord. So as the worship team comes back up and we look to close, I wanted the graduates to be able to walk away today with this idea of wisdom. They're walking into a period of life that they've never experienced before. And for you who are family, all of you who came up to surround your graduate as we prayed over them, you have been through it before. Be there to support them. Be there to give them wisdom. And you graduates, when they come and they look to give you wisdom, listen to them. They love you. They care about you, and they've been through these things before. But more importantly than that, graduates, seek the wisdom of God, because He is the one that can protect you. He is the one that can shield you from the foolishness that is this world. And you don't have to look very hard to see the foolishness of the world. So as we come to this time, in a moment, the altar will be open for anybody who needs to come pray or who wants to come talk to me about anything. All of us here today, we all start in the simple. And there are still areas of my life where I don't understand things. And I still need to continue to learn and continue to grow, and that is true for us all. It said in Proverbs 1:5, the wise man continues to seek learning. And my encouragement for all of us here today is seek the wisdom of God, and He will protect you from the foolishness. But if you do not seek the wisdom of God, foolishness will entice you, and you will fall into it. So as we leave here today, and we go back to work, we go back to our families, I want you to be thinking about, how am I going to seek the wisdom of God? Let's not be lazy. Let's not be prideful. Let's not surround ourselves with bad company. Let's seek God and store up His wisdom in our hearts. Let's pray. Dear Lord, we come before you right now, thankful for your wisdom, thankful for the way that you protect us and you shield us through everything that we go through if we will seek your wisdom. Lord, for these graduates, I ask, Lord, that you work in their hearts. You show them the value of your wisdom, and that they will seek after that, and you will protect them from the foolishness of this world. Lord, I pray for that same thing for myself and for all of us adults here today, and even our children. Lord, let us seek after you and not be enticed by this world. And in doing that, we will be a light for you to this world. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen. Will you please stand?